Radio Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV Radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is November 7th, 2016. It's Monday, 8 o'clock in the morning. And as you know, it's Manhattan Project Monday. I have on activists and people who understand how to reverse the effects of really the Manhattan Project, which got us all started down this dark, dark road that we have to walk. Today I have back on with us the friend of our show, Chuck Hindman from Mid-America Land Restoration. And I just want to ask you to join us right away, Chuck. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, look, the last time you were on, we were talking with Matt Holstrom, and we were talking about the radiation levels, and I know you've done a lot more work into this. Is that something you want to pick up right away?
Yeah, get the hard hits, hard punches in early.
Okay.
Over the weekend, Veterans Today released the new article with the latest 2 weeks of numbers. Matt and I and yourself discussed 2 weeks ago the differences in the readings from the EPA to Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center to Veterans Today with Bob. And Bob is doing a great job as far as I'm concerned. He's putting in a lot of work and a lot of effort, because when I was doing it, you're talking about hours upon hours every day trying to gather data and put things together.
Yeah, no, that's what Matt does. Matt does the same thing.
And what Bob is doing is remarkable. Everybody needs to understand the EPA and the Nuclear Emergency Tracking, their numbers are based on gamma. And what Bob is doing is it's combined radiation highs that affect people around the United States. He's doing the recorded beta and gamma combined. So he's giving us probably the more accurate and true numbers with the combination of the beta and the gamma versus just one or the other. And on November 5th, I believe it was, yep, on November 5th, he turned loose of the last set of numbers. And these numbers include, get this, 47 cities across the United States are above 1,000 counts per minute.
Wow.
So, the first city on the list was Colorado Springs, reporting in at 1,559 counts per minute. That is 311.8 times normal. What everybody needs to remember, normal radiation is a 5 to 20 count per minute.
Wow.
When you're looking at 300, over 300 times normal. Navajo Lake in New Mexico reported in at 1,549 counts.
So,
That's 300.
Chuck, do you mind? I'm going to interrupt you. I want to go back to this, but on this web page, it's called Veterans Today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's veteranstoday.com. On their page, where would people find this information so that we can go there and look? Because obviously Bob is doing this on a more regular basis, right? So he's probably keeping up the rates. How often does he post up?
Every 2 weeks. He was doing it every week, but like I said, the time that it takes to do this, now he just turns them loose every 2 weeks.
Those are shocking numbers, and that's why I interrupt you, because these are really shocking numbers. And so this is a website that is attempting to give us accurate. I spoke to Matt Holkstrom about this a little bit, and he said really that pretty much he agrees with a lot of the information. There's different ways to read it. He's going to actually join us on our show at another time also. But he basically was saying, yeah, these are shockingly high numbers. So if someone was to go to veteranstoday.com, where would they find it looking at their webpage? Where would this information be? Do you know? Which part
Bob
of the webpage?
Nicholas is the columnist, and you're going to look for your radiation the week, and he keeps track of these by week numbers. Like right now, we're discussing the week numbers of 79 and 80.
Wow. Go ahead.
When you open up his page, you'll see every week.
Wow.
Every 2 weeks. And then earlier it was every week. You just click on whatever week you want to look at, and it'll open up that particular set of readings.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks. I mean, these are numbers that are real. They're taking them with what type of a Geiger counter? Do you know?
I have no idea what they're using.
Okay.
They may be monitors. They may be, most of these are going to be something stronger other than Geigers.
Oh, okay, good, because Geigers are kind of weak, aren't they? That's the issue. I remember when Mimi Gurman basically said to me today, a couple weeks ago, something about, these Geiger counters, really realistically, you have to leave them. If you have a Geiger counter, you have to take it to an exposed area and leave it there for a good 10, 15 minutes to get the readings to really get an accurate reading. You can't just walk into it.
It's a time lock.
Yeah.
It's a time lock average test.
Wow. Okay, well, go ahead. And I thank you for allowing me to interrupt you, but would you mind reading again just the list? So we have Colorado Springs at over 1,000. And where do they...
Colorado Springs is at 1,559.
Is there a pattern? Do you see a pattern like that goes from West Coast to East Coast on these cities, or is it generating from one city and then moving east, or does it look like that?
It's West Coast to East Coast. Like I said, we've got Colorado, New Mexico, California. A lot of these are repeated over the jet stream. And one of the areas I'm going to discuss and talk about when we get there is those of us that live in the plains, we know the difference with the weather coming off of the Rockies because we're the backside, so we get a different format of different things because of the Rockies. And right now you'll see in this list that we're not doing so well with these numbers here in the plains. We're a lot higher than most because the jet streams are coming off, and it's just allowing a lot higher count per minute on the backside because the air kind of falls off of the mountain.
Wow.
Back onto our list, like I said, Navajo Lake in New Mexico was 1549. Bakersfield, California, reported in 1,513 counts, which is still over 300 times normal. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, came in at 1,500, 300 times normal. We're talking east and west coast there, except for Colorado Springs and New Mexico. And then you drop into Tulsa, Oklahoma, reporting in at 1,477 counts per
Tulsa,
minute.
Oklahoma, how could it be so high in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Because it's the plain.
Wow.
Then we go back out to Portland, Maine, 1,440 counts per minute. And then again, here we are, right here in the middle of the country with Kansas City reporting in at 1,432.
Wow. Wow.
And then we got Bismarck, North Dakota, coming in under Kansas City, Idaho's Falls, Louisville, Kentucky.
What's
South
Louisville,
Dakota.
Kentucky at?
Louisville was at 1,380 counts per minute.
And that was in November, this month, just a few days ago.
This last 2 weeks.
Wow. No wonder we're seeing such a spike in an increase in cancer among children. I mean, I was listening to them talk about how in Iraq, all over Iraq, because the United States, and this was such an egregious lie, they were saying the United States they're using depleted uranium weapons. The way they frame it in our country is really seriously gaslighting, because they were talking about how the depleted uraniums, the United States really is using and selling depleted uranium, and how we really don't have conclusive evidence that the uranium is harmful to people, which is a complete lie. We have complete conclusive evidence that uranium is harmful to people. I mean, what we have is a military that's out of control and willing to sell their toxic waste and put them into bullets and shoot them on people. I mean, that's essentially what it is. They're just poisoning everybody with depleted uranium weapons and saying, well, we didn't know it caused so much harm, but that's a complete lie. I mean, across our country, we are in a very bad state of ill health due to uranium mining and uranium processing and nuclear power plants. And no one talks about the tritium. I find it completely stunning.
Tritium, you got all of that nuclear waste that's down there in New Mexico that keeps rearing its ugly head every time we get a roof collapse down there at WIPP waste treatment facility.
Which happened just very recently. The WIPP.
Yeah, October 8th was the last time I knew of a roof collapse.
That's right.
Just a month ago.
And it's still not in a place where they can put it back together. That's the issue.
They won't be able to, because they got fracking going on around the territory.
Wow.
I'll never understand why we're fracking oil in an area that like that. That's just mind blowing.
It's unconscionable, Chuck, that our government is completely ignoring it and making outrageously false statements about the ill health that befalls people who are even near this. You know, they want to say they have a well-trained workforce, they have people who know how to handle it, and yet as these people fall off and get sick, the government basically does nothing for them but watch them just die, hope they die quickly. That's kind of their answer.
Oh, look at how many workers up there at Hanford got sick in the last year.
Oh, God.
Hanford was in the news quite often because a lot of their workers were falling down. That was, 2-3 months back.
Right. Well, the judge refused to dismiss it. You know, up there they asked for it to be dismissed, the lawsuit for better. This is all that the workers are asking for, better protection from the, quote, chemical vapors. And literally they took them to court to have the judge dismiss the lawsuit. And the judge, to his credit, refused to dismiss it. I mean, this was the shock. It was the Department of Energy joined with Water River Protection Solutions, said the state lacked standing in the lawsuit and didn't challenge the right of Hanford Challenge and the union to sue. The Department of Energy and the tank farm contractor were fighting against Hanford Challenge, which is an activist group up there, and the local union 598, just to sue for protective gear. And our department, this was the hardest part for me to wrap my head around, Chuck. Our Department of Energy was fighting these people. When you personally know that we were talking about this before we got on the air. Your contention is the microbes, if they would use the microbes, we could actually remediate even the catastrophic state of Hanford.
Yeah, by simply drilling, monitoring wells, perforated line into the ground, dropping it, 30 foot down into the soil, and putting a heavy grid of these wells all the way around, or we could be pumping the microbes straight down into the soil and letting them go to work.
Wow.
And then, we also got to flood the topsoil too. So, it can be done. It's going to be expensive and pricey, but when you look at the lives affected and the water and, that river feeds most of California's water supplies, so.
Well, look, they're talking about pricey. I saw this article in the Hanford cleanup, the cost in 2017. It says, no total Hanford cleanup cost to be released in 2017 because of overruns, and they can't figure it out. The last cycle report put the nuclear cost at $107 billion, almost $108 billion. So you're going to tell me it's pricey? Like, this is so outrageous that they're even going to be using that. We're talking about waste that contains plutonium. I mean, the thing that makes the Hanford such a gigantic mess is when they built those plants, they put 3 or 4 plutonium tanks right on the river before the government acknowledged how dangerous plutonium was. So they had to use the plutonium plants and move it inland a little bit off of the river once there was enough public pressure. But, you can't clean up plutonium, right? Like, it doesn't just like, we're going to pick it up and the area is going to be clean. It contaminates. It makes everything poisonous for a minimum. I mean, the half-life is 76,000 years or 26,000 years, some incredibly gigantic number like that?
And ironically, that's and that's what people need to understand. No matter how you look at this kind of contamination, your half-life, that's if you don't do anything with it and Mother Nature has to run her own course. And
wow.
The key with working with the microbes is giving Mother Nature her natural microbes to help cut those half-lives back. So it can be cleaned up. But we've got to put the natural microbes to work.
Have you contacted Hanford Challenge about the microbes? Have you been in touch with them, the Hanford Challenge people?
I've talked to somebody through some articles that I had gotten and I had posted on the page.
Uh-huh.
There was some phone numbers available at different points in time, and I don't know if it was an oversight to Hanford or if it was Hanford themselves, but I have talked to someone, and they did acknowledge that they did try to do something with microbes, and it did do some improvement, but they found it to be too costly.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's penny wise and pound foolish, right? So, it might be expensive on the front end, but you're talking about, this is the interesting thing. Maybe after the show, what I'll do is I'll give you the number for the people at the Hanford Challenge, Tom Carpenter. He's actually on Facebook. Hanford Challenge is actually an activist group that's stationed in Washington. It's full of lawyers and people and activists that really literally all they do is watchdog what's going on at Hanford, and they really put a lot of pressure on the government. You know, I've been to several of their presentations, and to hear them talk, I would guess that they know nothing about that there's a possibility for the microbes. I've never heard them once mention it, and I believe if they knew about it, they might actually be willing to push for it, because while microbes are expensive, in the long run, they're going to end up costing us a lot. Look how long have we been dealing with Hanford? If they would have started pouring microbes on Hanford 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we wouldn't
have near the problems we got now, no.
Right. And so, yes, it might be expensive, but how much money have we spent on there? That $107 billion is just for, that's not the total cleanup cost. That's just their new projected budget.
And then they get a pretty big budget every year, so.
This is outrageous. So before the show, you were telling me that you think that they used microbes to help clean up 3 Mile Island. What?
There's been cleanups with microbes in the past.
Uh-huh.
That's why they know that the microbes are going to work.
Uh-huh.
There's sites right there in Colorado that have been cleaned up via the microbes. And, people in the microbial world, we know that this works because it's been done. And, through all of the investigations and Reddit and everything else I've been through, they are quite aware of what the possibilities are, but it doesn't fit their agenda.
So it's the same thing with what's going on in Fukushima. Like, they could be using microbes, but they are just ignoring it?
I see signs every once in a while. You got to understand, with the microbial, trying to get things across the pond or across the borders since 9/11 is very difficult. And there are microformulators over there in Japan, and they are trying to do a lot of things with microbes over there, but what you got to also realize, that's ground zero. And, we're not ground zero. We got a whole lot easier job ahead of us right here in the United States because we're not ground zero.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's easier. It's kind of like how much, the fact is we're all purely contaminated, right? Like, it doesn't, how much, it's like we were talking about earlier about the people in Iraq and Fallujah. Like, they have been literally carpet bombed with uranium dust, depleted uranium. And it's showing up now in their children and in their babies. We don't have such a heavy hand in all of that. We have a more subtle exposure to the radioactive contamination through tritium in our water. The tritium in the water is really very disturbing because you cannot filter out. Now, are you telling me microbes could take out the tritium in the water?
What everybody needs to understand, our water, there is a natural filter to our water, and it's called our soil. So whatever contamination we got in our soil will bleach and leach through to the water. So when we've got clean soil, guess what? We're going to have cleaner water. Now, it's, like I said, it's a process. If we want clean water, we've got to clean that filter. So
essentially, what you're suggesting is that we need to have a lot more microbes in every part of the nation being poured on our ground and our dirt.
Yes, because here's why. Between the generation change with farming, from true grassroots farming to the farming we got now with all of the chemical onslaught, and just the overuse of chemicals has killed the natural balance in our soil with our microbes. And then you look at the years of the anhydrous pneumonia the fertilizer anhydrous. Anhydrous freezes and kills the soil. One of the things I will never understand with the use of anhydrous, and I see farmers doing it every year out here, the fact that when they built Mile High Airport there in Denver, when they built this new airport, they used anhydrous back and forth, building the hard pan to build the runways.
Wow.
Because it freezes and kills the soil. And that's what farmers are using for fertilizer because it's so cheap. But then, yeah, like I said,
wait a minute. You're telling me that our farmers are using poison for fertilizer?
Anhydrous ammonia. It's not a poison. It just that it freezes the soil, killing your natural microbe. And anhydrous is so cold.
So this is why we have land that is no longer produces its own microbes, because the what do we call them? The pesticides that we pour on there is actually killing the microbes. Is that the basic science of it?
Yeah, and between the chemicals and all the different fertilizers, the biggest thing is your chemicals and your pesticides. People think if they use natural oils, your essential oils, it's just like we were talking last night. There was a gentleman here locally that got all riled up, told me our product don't work. And when I found out what he had done, he was playing with the formulation. He was trying to, in his words, make it better. Well, we're on a fine balance, and when you add citrus to a natural product, even though there's natural citrus oils out there, what people need to understand, when you start playing around with things that you don't understand what you're doing, citrus is the key component to pesticides. They use citrus to extract citrus for your key component for pesticides. So when you're adding buckets upon buckets of citrus oil to a 300-gallon tote of microbes, guess what you just did? Because it is a key component to a pesticide, and microbes are naturally beneficial microscopic organisms, which are bugs. You just killed a 300-gallon tote of microbes using citrus oil.
So citrus oil will actually kill the microbes?
Citrus is the key component to a pesticide. They extract citrus to build a pesticide. That's the base of the DNA of a pesticide.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this. Because I live in the Northwest and I'm part of No Nukes Northwest, I pay attention to the Tri-City Herald online. I go there regularly, right? Last month...
Tri-City Herald is actually one of the articles, the newspapers I was following with Hanford, and they were the ones that published the phone numbers that I used to get a hold of somebody out there.
Right. Well, at Hanford, it's interesting because this is the only newspaper I've ever seen that actually really does report. Although the way this story is framed, there's a huge story that happened last month that I never got around to just share with our audience, but it says groundwater, 90 tons of contamination cleaner. So this article is touting the fact that the Hanford has cleaned up 90 tons of contamination from the groundwater, because there's people, I don't know if people are aware, but Bechtel basically poured contaminated waste into 40 miles of trenches, and it's contaminating the groundwater that heads to Seattle, right? In fiscal year 2015 and 16, a little more than 2.1 billion gallons of contaminated groundwater were pumped out of the ground. That is an astounding number. So you're telling me that if these people were to actually use the microbes in large amounts, this could be, how long do you think it would take to remediate this? If they were to actually really aggressively use microbes, how long, I mean, is it a 100-year process that it would take?
I'm not going to say 100-year. We've got a lot of contamination down there already, but it's not going to clean up overnight.
Right. Obviously.
And by no means is it going to clean itself up if they don't do anything with it either.
Right. I mean, and the way they are cleaning it is not really cleaning it. They're just sort of moving the contamination from one container to another. They're sort of separating it out. They're not neutralizing it. They're not doing anything to turn it into anything else. They're just separating it. And they're not actually separating any of the radioactive waste. What they're doing is separating, I think, different chemicals like, excuse me, in the article it says hexavalent chromium, whatever that is. You know what I mean?
And everybody, if you've got a water softener in your home, somewhere you've got a water filter to filter your water. So let me ask you this. If you do not change that filter out, what's your drinking water going to taste like in 6 months?
Yeah, exactly.
So why, you said they pumped the contamination out of the ground. They didn't replace the contaminated soil. They didn't do anything with the contaminated soil. They didn't change the filter, our natural filter, so the contamination's still there. They're just taking the rainwater and the spring water and pumping it back into another tank. As long as that soil is still there, still contaminated, you're still going to have contaminated water because that soil is the natural filter to our water.
This is the thing that really blows me away, Chuck, more than anything else, is this microbe remediation, just like when we spoke with Scott out in St. Louis who's trying to do the phytoremediation, right? These are ideas that the government actually really knows. We have, in my view, I believe we actually have emergencies going on. We have a nuclear emergency in our country. The nuclear contamination is not just a minor issue. It's a major catastrophic issue, especially since Fukushima is nonstop. You've spoken with the DOE and the EPA and all these people who understand that. Do you think that Donna Gilmore contends that these people really do not understand the gravity of the situation? That she believes that the people even working at the EPA believe the scientific liars when they say that it's just not that bad and that we're just being, alarmists.
It's just like when I was butting heads with them all the time. The data that they're using versus the data that was done in the 50s when they studied this originally. The studies in the 50s said straight up, it does not dilute in ocean water. But guess what? Fukushima happened and everybody's saying, don't worry about it. You got all that ocean water, it's going to dilute. Well, it don't dilute, and they're finding out that it's killed the ocean, so it obviously didn't dilute.
Well, there's a lot, there is a lot of denial. In fact, I'm going to be having Chuck from the Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility on Wednesday. That is, in fact, going to be the point of our conversation. He and I have been having this ongoing conversation. He buys into, now this is the Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility, which is kind of a national network. He's in Oregon. It's an organization set up by Dr. Helen Caldicott. They contend that even though Helen Caldicott herself says the solution to pollution is not dilution, Chuck contends that the ocean is just too big for Fukushima to have had any real effect, that there's no scientific study proving that Fukushima has harmed the planet, and that it's just not that harmful, that we're being alarmists over the fact that Fukushima has been going on for 6 years, that there's no real evidence that it's harming. And this, now, he's an anti-nuke activist. He is a committed. He's not like somebody. I mean, I know him personally. And I've spoken with him many times. He's very anti-nuclear, but he really has drank the Kool-Aid.
Simply ask him about the papers of Chernobyl. How many deaths were contributed to Chernobyl? And then when he's done explaining that one to you, because there's paperwork out there that tells you it's broke down for Chernobyl.
Well, you know, if you go with the IAEA's number, they're going to tell you 1,500 people. That's their number. If you look on their website, they'll say 1,500 people were killed from Chernobyl. I mean, we know how they work. This is why anytime I hear any organization saying that they are doing anything with the World Health Organization in relation to nuclear, you have got to be wary of any of the information that the World Health Organization comes out in relation to nuclear, because the IAEA can subvert and suppress any information that they want from the World Health Organization, and they do.
But like I said, things are a whole lot worse than anybody has any clue to.
It's true.
And where Fukushima is a whole lot worse than Chernobyl ever thought of being. And Chernobyl still is still leaking. It's still contaminating. But you don't hear about it.
Well, not only do we not hear about it, I mean, they intentionally suppress. I mean, many of us watch the YouTube live feeds, and especially people who listen to this radio station, many of us are pretty active in paying attention to it. And in the last week, we've seen they took down the sides of the number 3 nuclear reactor. They took the side, you know how they built those little fake walls around those dilapidated buildings? Well, according to Dana Durnford, I didn't know why, but Dana says he did some research and discovered they took them down because they are emanating so much radiation that they don't really protect. The point of putting them up was to keep the radiation sort of encased. It wasn't a permanent structure, so now they're changing it out. And since they took the sides down, they are giving us no reason, but the news feeds are down at Fukushima also. They're just not reporting.
That's why we're having such a hard time of getting any updated info out of Fukushima.
It's a complete, I mean, it is the 90% rule. I mean, Dr. John Goffman studied this for 20 years. His conclusion was that the IAEA, U.S. military, most world governments, all the utility companies, they underreport the negative effects by radiation of 90% and deny that radiation causes harm. That is the story they're sticking with in every story that you read across the board. It's unbelievable, but it is the truth. And in fact, I think the 90% rule is why people don't want to talk to us about the danger that we're in. Because on an unconscious level, they have been socially programmed to just accept that. What did that guy from the AEC say in 1962? We have facts of life about our lives, and one of the facts of life are humans have to learn how to live with nuclear pollution, with fallout. And what you're saying is we don't need to learn to live with it, that there is a correction to the imbalance.
Correct. Now, I want to read a quote from Bob Nichols on his page this last go-around. This is from Bob. Notice, I have determined that it is necessary for public health and because the many nuclear reactors are venting radioactive gases and steam at night and on weekends that all residents must stay inside at night and weekends, especially hard-hit areas in the cities listed as above 1,000 counts per minute by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and the list goes on.
So he's saying that people need to stay inside at night?
At night and on weekends, because that's when they cycle these reactors, because they can't do that during the daylight hours where people see it.
Oh, that's a clever idea. So what he's suggesting is that people not be outdoors during the nighttime and
on weekends.
and on the weekends. Well, on the weekends is when people go out and get out into the woods and go do their stuff and have family
Yeah, but they're
picnics
so
and stuff.
busy doing, they're not paying attention.
And is that only near the places where there are nuclear reactors?
That would be your primary.
Wow.
But he's also, because I've said this all along, we cannot get rid of it. And it's like they said, we got to learn how to live with it. But when you take and look at how much leakage we do have, how much venting, every reactor vents, every reactor steams during its cycle. And then when you look at the leakage of Chernobyl to the 3 Mile Island, to Fukushima, to every other reactor on the planet, and all the reactors that have had problems over there in abroad. Now look at the atmospheric condition. Got to remember how contaminated our atmosphere is with it. And it's only going to get worse because it keeps getting added to with every steam off, every cycle, every day Fukushima. They're working on enclosing Chernobyl again. Those coffins for Chernobyl, because of the radiation levels, they're only good for 30 years. That's why the original one collapsed shortly after Fukushima's incident.
Well, the second one that they put in has also collapsed now, too. I mean, this is the thing, even here as the Tri-City, I mean, every single facility where they have attempted to do something, it's almost as if they intentionally use the worst solutions. I mean, if we look at like the pattern of you make a spread chart of the best solutions and the worst solutions and you make a plot chart of it, it's almost as if the DOE and the nuclear industry intentionally uses the worst options. To me, it's just beyond comprehension that we have microbes that really yes, it's going to be expensive, but how much money are we pouring into our war machine? I mean, this sounds like something that we really need to be putting pressure on the Department of Energy, is for all of us to be calling and writing the Department of Energy to say, hey, look, we've heard about this new solution. Yes, it's expensive, but as taxpayers, we're willing to, pony up. I mean, that's the ridiculousness of it, that we're spending more money on the war machine than we are on microbes to remediate the land.
It's politics of life.
Well, I'm not interested in buying that meme. I mean, I'm personally sick of being socially engineered. I mean, it's time for us to actually demand real answers out of our government and really to force these people. This is one of the reasons why I like Donna Gilmore's work, because she extends herself out. The cool thing is she's retired. So retired people actually have the opportunity to take advantage of the time that they don't have to spend 40, 50 hours of working, right? Like myself. I mean, I probably 50 to 60 hours a week is already absorbed. I don't have a lot of time to contact our elected officials, but I do make an effort to. But, if we could write letters to the Department of Energy and say, hey, look, there are things that we can do to remediate. Like, this is ridiculous that out at Hanford, they've extended the deadline to clean it up because they just don't have, they don't have the answers yet. I mean, it's beyond, Hanford deadline extended for radioactive waste tank farm caps. So this is the issue. They're giving them until 2020 to cap their plutonium tanks out there. I mean, it's beyond comprehension.
Here a few years ago, when United States sent over their cleanup specialists over there to Japan to coordinate and try and help with Fukushima. Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah.
Do you remember who they sent over there as a cleanup specialist to help Fukushima?
No.
It was the gentleman that was head of the cleanup for Hanford.
I don't know, Chuck. Who? Tell us. I don't remember.
I don't remember his name. I'm just saying he was one of those in charge of the cleanup of Hanford, and they sent him over to help Fukushima.
Yeah.
I don't. Like I said, that's been 3 years ago.
Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it.
But anyway, he was, and here we're talking about the lack of response for cleaning up Hanford, and they were the ones that sent this gentleman over to Fukushima.
Well, here we go. The cleanup scientist. I actually was able to find it. Thank God for the Googles. His name is Matthew McCormick. And he's the person who was sent over there. Now, do you think that Matthew McCormick has this information about that the microbes could actually remediate? See, Donna Gilmore contends that these people just don't know.
Well, one of the things that I've learned doing what I've been doing for the last 5 years, from talking to the politicians, state levels, local levels, these people, so many people don't have a clue that, the way everybody's been schooled and taught over the years, we've dumbed down our kids in these schools so badly that I had to laugh when I went and just a few months back when I went to some rallies locally for political rallies, and I started talking to some of the candidates and for state level. The first question I asked one of them was, is there a safe level of radiation? And the one that I was talking to was a doctor. And he said, well, yes, there is. And I said, excuse me. I made him explain, and I told him, I was well, we can agree to disagree. And I said, number two, second question out of the block was, can we agree that our jet stream moves from west to east? He looked at me totally dumbfounded. He said, I don't know, I suppose. Tell me. He didn't have a clue. And then I said, well, can we agree that what goes up must come down is called gravity? These people, I have to literally get out what I used to call, when we were growing up, the Big Chief notebook with the big crayons. You've got to draw these people a picture to make them understand what's going on.
I think it's because they're afraid that if they acknowledge it, then they're going to get into trouble in their own careers. They get into public pressure because of the social engineering to just pretend like radiation is just not that harmful. We are under such extreme pressure to pretend like radiation is just not that harmful because it doesn't kill you right away and we don't see the effects of it. And Dr. John Goffman's work has been summarily suppressed all throughout. And I don't know about you, Chuck, but I hate that phrase, let's agree to disagree. That, when we're talking about radioactive contamination, there is no agreeing to disagree, in my view. They are refusing to admit the facts.
I was in a place that I wasn't going to create a scene.
Right, I got that. I understand that. And besides that, you're not going to convince him in one or two conversations.
No.
He has to do his own homework to figure this out himself.
And I asked everybody the same set of questions. And when I kept getting the deer in the headlight look, I don't know, it's like, good Lord, and you're running for office, but yet you are a doctor. My goodness, we're in trouble.
Right. Right. Well, we are in trouble with the doctors. Anybody who hasn't read that book, Death by Medicine, get an answer and you'll find out why our doctors are in such bad shape.
I mean, it's just like here several years ago when my daughter was in the hospital in severe pain. They found that she was having issues with her kidneys, and I was face-to-face with the kidney specialist, and she was talking about bacteria and this and this and this and how she's got this kind of bacteria, which is bad for her. And I turned around and looked at her. I says, okay, before you go any further, I want you to understand I'm not just a common Joe off the street. I deal in microbes, microorganisms, and that's what my business is. A kidney specialist that has been talking to me for 20, 30 minutes about bacteria had no clue what a microbe was.
Wow.
Microbe is bacteria in its overall definition.
He had to have known what a microbe was. I can't believe that. He must have just gotten confused in your conversation.
And when I broke it down and explained it to her, she still didn't. It was like, okay, I'll take care of my own daughter. You worry about your treatments yourself.
Wow. Well, you know what, though? I can believe that because of the state of health of our medical institutions in this country. Like, in my, this is another whole topic we could talk about, but I call them the American Murder Association. Like, they really have no idea how to heal people. When people say we have the best health care in the world, I vehemently disagree. We have minimally educated physicians in this country. I mean, it is, and I take issue with this idea that Fukushima is not harming the Pacific Ocean. People say that it's not. It's just not. The ocean is just way too big for it to happen. But that might have happened if they would have stopped Fukushima in 1 year, maybe. I mean, enough contamination came out when the thing blew up to really harm the ocean. But we have, ongoing for 6 years and ongoing. There is no stopping. It's a nuclear volcano.
And we're taking 300 tons a day for the last 6 years. Now, here's the thing. We've got roughly, according to my clock, about 8 minutes left.
That's right.
So let me run down through this list of cities real quick before we get...
Okay.
That way everybody that's listening has a list of cities that they realize if they're in that area that, hey, maybe we need to pay a little bit more attention. All right, we're going back up to the top of the list. Colorado Springs reported in at 1,559 counts per minute. Navajo Lake in New Mexico was 1,549. Bakersfield, California reported in at 1,513 counts per minute. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was an even 1,500 counts per minute. Tulsa, Oklahoma reported 1,477. Portland, Maine, 1,440. Kansas City, Kansas, 1,432. Bismarck, North Dakota, 1,430. Idaho Falls, 1,420. Louisville was 1,380. Perry, South Dakota, was at 1,376. Atlanta, Georgia, 1,368. Raleigh, North Carolina, 1,360. Denver, Colorado, 1,345. Little Rock, Arkansas, 1,331. Harrisonburg, 1,323.
You're talking counts per minute. 1,300 counts per minute.
Exactly.
Of gamma
Grand
radiation.
Junction, Colorado, is at 1,282 counts per minute. Hartford was at 1,271. Fresno, California, 1,248. San Diego was 1,224. Billings, Montana was at 1,218. Mason City was in at 1,202. Spokane, Washington, they hit the list at 1,146. Back out to Rochester, New York at 1,171. Yuma, Arizona at 1,167. Right back here in Kansas with Wichita reporting in at 1,164. Shreveport, Louisiana was 1,161. Laredo, Texas, 1158. And then the closest station to me, Kearney, Nebraska, was reported at 1342. Phoenix, Arizona is 1145. Worcester, 1143. El Paso, 1129. Casper, Wyoming, 1112. Boston, back out on the East Coast, was 1131. Los Angeles was reported at 1087. Tucson, Arizona is 1083. Oklahoma City is 1075. Atlanta, Georgia, 1068. Riverside, California was 1068. Lexington, Kentucky, 1066. Lubbock, Texas, 1062. La Crosse was at 1059. Providence, 1049. Charleston, 1034.
Wow.
Anaheim, 1024. Concord, 1023. And then Lincoln, Nebraska, headed at 1,000. Now, like I said earlier, Colorado Springs, Denver, Grand Junction, Kearney, Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, Kansas City, Tulsa, and Oklahoma. You draw lines back and forth, zigzag across those, and you cover up most of Kansas, and I'm right in the crosshairs above 1,000 counts per minute. Now, do you think that makes me irritated?
Wow. Wow. Well, look, what does this mean? Can you, I mean, we have we have about a minute and a half. I'm asking you a huge question in about a minute and a half. I found it on their website. It says all these counts per minute. Now, these are count gamma rays. It says gamma and beta. So essentially what people really need to do is just make sure they don't spend out a lot of time outside, correct? I mean, that's really the big issue, is just limit. And if you're going to go outside, wear a scarf in front of your face and your nose or something like that, just to protect your body from taking it in.
No matter what we do, we're not going to be able to put a mask or a scarf on our cattle. We're not going to be able to put anything on our chick. You got to remember, we're eating this stuff because our food supply is in it. This is why the government raised our radiation safety limits the way they did in our drinking water. Because it's in the soil, it's in everything we eat and drink.
They have to, right.
But what these guys, these specialists aren't telling you, as the food chain goes, so does the accumulation of the radiation.
Right. It is accumulative. It's true. It is. It's not just like you get 1 minute of exposure. This is why the rates are going up exponentially. It used to be 300, it used to be 200, and now it's 500, and now it's 1,000, so exponentially. But you know what, Chuck? We have like 30 seconds left. So I want to encourage our listeners to go to Chuck's website. You can find him at Mid-America Land Restoration. Just Google that in, and you'll find his website, Mid-America Restore. Is that Land Restore?
MidAmericaLandRestore.com, or find me on Facebook with Mid-America Land Restoration. You'll find all of the contact information, there's multiple ways of getting a hold of me.
Okay, well, put your courage feet on, you guys. Take some action. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the other side of the election. Take care. Bye-bye.